Welcome to Tech Garage, presented by RockAuto.com. Well, we got a no delivery situation. Well, it's really a no start. And we popped the hood. Look inside there. You can't see anything. So the best plan of action here is to go inside the van. We went ahead and did that. We took off the doghouse. The console's right there. You can see the wear and tear on it as well. The grill, I mean, this thing has some miles on it. You know, high mileage vehicle delivering mail here at Chipola College. Most people want to trash it. But you know, this is Tech Garage, and we got Brian Gregory inside. I got no worries. So let's check in with him and let's get this thing back on the road.
Well, of course, Giant John's not crawling up here in this small space, especially in a van that has no shag carpet in it. You know what, with the dog box off, access is pretty easy. It's a Chevy 350, the distributor's at the back. Now, proper diagnostic procedure. When you've got a no-start condition, you want to check ignition first, fuel second. So out under the hood, I verified we're not throwing any spark. Next natural stop along the way, distributor, cap, and rotor. No fancy tools required once that box is off. We've got a Torx wrench and a magnet. You want a magnet for this job because these little screws that hold the cap down and the rotor in, you don't want to drop them down into the engine bay. More about that in a second. Another free tip for you, a best practice is to label your wires. This van has 150,000 miles on it. It's a prime candidate for a full ignition tune-up, and so we'll end up doing plugs and wires and the whole deal and do it really right. But even though there's looms and the wires only go one way, I like to label each wire, not with numbers, but with letters, so you don't cross it up and think that's a firing order reference. You'll do that times all 8, so you replace them one by one and get them right as you go back in. So there's 2 screws that hold the cap on. I'm going to loosen this front one. I'll move to the back one. I'll label my wires. I'll get this guy off, take it to the bench and get a good examination, do a little forensics over there. Meanwhile, John, how does an ignition system really work?
Well, Brian had mentioned it's a high-mile vehicle. Well, RockAuto.com thought of everything. We got a whole set from them right here. You can see the cap, you got the rotor, you got the spark plug wires built into one set. Smart move, Brian. What'd you find?
Absolutely. Well, we've got some evidence. So if we take a look at our interior post here in the old distributor cap that we took out, wow, we definitely have some degradation.
Yeah, tip it up. Look at the size of that, man. Look at that.
You could call that electrolysis, you could call it chalking, you know what I call it? Resistance.
Yep, exactly.
We're definitely not throwing spark.
That thing got all over my finger. I mean, just, that's the deal. And then throw the rotor in the mix. If you see the top of the rotor, if you can pan in on that, man, that right there, look at that, all burnt up. That just keeps happening and happening and happening. Eventually, that's what it was. It was an intermittent start to a no start. So now we're not throwing any spark at all.
Yeah, terribly, terribly inefficient. So I'm going to grab all of our new parts from RockAuto.com, get this stuff reinstalled.
Yeah, one other tip, you're in there, nice, is you can take the top of the distributor, wiggle it back and forth. These things are real noticeable when you start seeing these old cars. They start to flop back and forth, then it throws the spark unequally and you might get a misfire.
Absolutely. All right, I'll check that, make sure we're good. I'm going to get this back on the road.
Yep, you get to work. Now, let's take a look at this graphic right here. Now, the graphic actually shows what an ignition system is. The top portion of it's all our secondary. Those are those big fat wires throwing the spark. Below it is all our primary wires. That's the little wires feeding the low voltage. So the low voltage is going to get stepped up by a coil, bam, making high voltage. Well, I have it right here on the board. You can see what's going on here. It's almost the same distributor system. And if I pull off the cap right here, I can show you. Here's the cap Brian dealing with, and there's the rotor. Well, what happened, this goes down in the motor. Oil pump's driving all the way up through the camshaft, and it's driving the rotor. It's spinning around. Well, if I put it on, it actually starts distributing that spark around. Now our van was a no start. Brian said he did a spark test. Well, that's real easy. You can get a little spark tester like this right here and clip it on, and this is how he determined if he had spark or no spark. So if I clip it on there and I set it right there, now if I fire this up, this should have enough power, and it does, to jump that entire gap. Well, Brian had no spark there. So obviously with that much mileage, you might as well go ahead and start doing the ignition system. Now we step over to a waste spark. That's the next evolution. Our waste spark's right here. You actually have some coils and you have some spark plugs, but I'll fire it up for you and you see it in action. This one has a crank position sensor that's actually a tone wheel. It's magnetically picking up a signal and up it comes to the module. Now the module opens and closes and tells the coils when to fire. You can see them firing up there. Now pretty cool. The module's located right down here, so I can actually take it, tip it up, I can show you. I'll pull the coil off. So these coils are actually replaceable. It plugs right into the module's underneath, the coil's up on the top here. Once you plug it in there, well, our board's a 4-cylinder, it's got 2. A 6-cylinder would have 3, and a V8 would have 4. Waste spark principle. From there, we went to coil on plug. That's this one right here. Evolution, we're going in, we got the coil, we got the package, we got the spark plug going all the way through there, right here to the end, making the fire. One small package. Now, we want to see what happens if we don't have the spark, and Brian found it on the cap, but you know what? Maybe you have to go further. So Tech Garage fashion, we're going to take you through it right here. This one here is a distributor, just like our van, but there's an AC pickup. Well, there's a couple of styles of that. This one right here is a Hall effect switch. You can see it located right here. This is a Hall effect. This is pretty cool. This cuts a signal on and off, a 12-volt signal, and I can spin it right there. And you can see that shutter wheel go in and out, in and out. That's cutting that signal, that's turning that coil, pulse or not pulse. Why? Well, we got to have the spark at the right time. Now, what we have on ours here is we have an AC pickup. That's located right here. You can see the pickup located right there, and then here's the little teeth that go around. As that goes around, that sends an AC signal, different than the Hall effect. The AC signal spins around, and as it spins around, it's actually going to make an AC signal, send it to an ignition module, and an ignition module is going to convert it to DC. Well, better yet, I'll show it to you in action. This is really cool. You don't want to do this at home. I went ahead and just pierced these wires here so you could see it. But this is where the AC module is located, the pickup, and then it goes down to the ignition and it comes out DC. But watch the meter right there so you can tell if your pickup's working. I'm going to fire this thing up and we should get a reading. All right, so you see that, that's pulsing, AC voltage, positive, negative, we're good to go. Now, if it got out of the module and it's going over to a coil, here's another test you can make. Just find a test light, a Noid light, something. That coil should be pulsing on and off. I have it grounded over here and I have a test light. So if I come over here and I touch that coil, that's great. But what's supposed to happen is when that goes through that signal, it's going to pulse that test light so we know we're actually getting a pulse to fire that coil. Man, so you're getting a pulse. So you would just work your way. That's strategy-based diagnosis. That's what we always teach on Tech Garage. Step by step by step. Where did it fail? Where did the signal stop? That's the component that's not working. It's pretty simple. I mean, it's complex here, but you know, Brian's on there working pretty hard. He's at wide open throttle. Let's check in with him.
All right, second mounting screw on the new rotor. Again, don't over tighten. You don't want to break any of this. Plastic's a little bit brittle. It's secure. We got our new cap. Looks good. Little tip. Keep your fingers on those mounting screws as you go down on here. It only installs one way. You'll feel it lock into the base plate. There's where we want to be. Going to get this guy secured. We'll reconnect our plugs, and then we're going to check our repair and validate it and make sure that in fact was the problem. You see the new wires and the new plugs. That ultimately will finish this job off because it's a high mileage van. It gets a lot of low speed, around campus kind of wear and tear. Good candidate for a full ignition repair. Again, don't over tighten. You can break these tabs on the new cap. You don't want that. We get it good and snug. It's clearly locked in. Let me reconnect, following the loom, one-to-one on all the wires. Not going to totally seat them because we're throwing plenty of spark there. Get the right ones here. Oh, there we go. We want to just simply validate the repair. Get your coil wire on. Follow these guys up and through. Get them seated down here. Make sure we are in order. One more visual check. Everything's snug. Let's validate this repair before we move on. Running like a top. For John, we just need the disco ball, some shaggy rug in the back, and we'll be good to go. So let me get the wires going. Let me get our new Iridium plugs in from AC Delco. She's going to be running like a top. I tell you what, we're digging even deeper into engines coming up next in the LS lesson. Can't wait to get there. Hey, stay with us on Tech Garage, presented by RockAuto.com.